All right. I just thought that we might have a little bit of a chat with everybody about, the real issues of every day, what's happening in the supply chains. So I guess, Stephen, I'm going to throw it to you first. That's why I gave you the microphone first. Can you, as a grower of carrots and celery, and you're also domestic and export supply chain, can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you've actually found in your cold chain and what you've actually done to address those challenges?
Yep. So thanks, Jody. Thanks, Daff, for having us over here, and well done for a great afternoon. We're often faced with challenges in our industry. Most recently, it's been all around La Nina, so weather related. But just the same, our export challenges, mostly around cool chain, are, for example, I believe that for us to be successful in export, it comes down to supply relationships and customer relationships. So supply relationships might be from a logistical point of view, so we rely on Nolan's Transport to provide us with a perfect solution for transport, and we can trust that product to deliver. Customer relationship might be something like a retailer like Woolworths, Aldi or Coles, where we know that our product's going to go on their shelf and it's going to be turned over really quickly in a very good environment most of the time, and we can get on to the next delivery. However, the export side of our business is vastly different. So we've got many customers up in the Southeast Asian region and also into the Middle East. But on this one particular consignment that we sent into Malaysia, so the part of the process for us is we bring the product into the factory, we bring it down from field temperature of what might be 24 degrees through a hydrocooling process down to 2 to 4 degrees. It goes into our refrigeration at 1 degrees. It in between our loading dock and to the Port of Brisbane, it does have some heat gain because it's not on power until it gets to the Port of Brisbane, about an hour and a half away from our facility. Nonetheless, we've gone from 24 degrees field temperature down to 2 degrees, slight range rise in temperature while we're getting to the port, back onto the boat, 1 degrees, and straight into Malaysia. And I followed this consignment over, and when I got to the customer, it was sitting out in the wet market. So we've gone to all this trouble to make this product cold, and when it got to the customer, it sits on the wet market floor until it gets sold. And there was a 40-foot container of 2,400 units on there. And needless to say, going into an environment like that where the temperature's the humidity's 200%, and the temperature's quite high, quite disappointing that we've gone to all this trouble to manage the cool chain to have our product treated with such disrespect. So that was a finding. So then we started to look at, to combat and mitigate some of these circumstances, we started looking at a more reliable customer base and more so in that retail sector in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, so building that trust in your supply chain and making sure that people had the right equipment and knew how to handle your product. So did you have to do a bit of training of your customers on how you wanted your product treated on arrival?
In that scenario, it was unavoidable. We couldn't do much with the infrastructure that those guys had to deal with and work with. So we broadened our outlook on what that customer looks like. And typically, in this scenario, and particularly in Malaysia, we were looking more for a retail outlet rather than supplying the central market as such. So we actually took their lack of infrastructure out of their hands and put it into other more suitable relationships as far as the customer goes over there.
Yeah, well, thanks, Stephen, for sharing that with us. I'm now going to have a chat with Darren. Thanks, Darren, for stepping in on behalf of the Mulgowie team. Really appreciate you being here. So we've got a slightly different product with Mulgowie. We're talking sweet corn and green beans in a number of different sort of semi-processed package types. So probably some more challenges in that supply chain than probably Stephen has. So what would you say would be your biggest issues in the cold chain with those products, and what have you done to fix that or make it better, improvements?
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. Similar process probably to what Steve does. We receive from field, obviously trying to remove field heat as quick as possible. Some of our farm locations can be 5-6 hours away from our packing facilities, so we do have issues there. Um, in the past, we've blamed the transporters. They've done everything wrong. On reflection, we were doing some of the problems ourselves as well. So we made some modifications to our processes, our systems as well. But we also talked to not just Nylons but other transport providers what we were doing wrong to set them up to fail. So we did processes wrong. We made changes. Then we also did some work with these guys here, and I say these guys, just transporters in general, how they can treat our product properly and how to look after our product better.
So what in particular, what would have been the most outstanding thing that you did as a company to improve?
I wouldn't say there's any one silver bullet. We've done a lot of little things. Some of our issues was around our dollar saving, I suppose, maximising our transport, so filling the trucks to the roof. And as Robert said before, you stop the airflow and you stop the trucks working. We had a lot of problems that way. And probably just making sure our product is at the right temperature before it gets delivered to the next step in the chain, which is the transport to the end supplier.
Yeah, well, thanks for that insight. I think we've been hearing a lot that it's really, really important that we make sure that we get that temperature right from the start, right from harvest, as quickly as possible. So, Belinda, you got something that's a little bit more fragile in your packaged salads, and a few more challenges because of your multiple packaging shapes and sizes. What is the biggest challenge that you've faced, and what have you done to address that?
So in terms of the history of cool chains, if I reflect when I was about 9 years old, when Carter and Spencer used to trade out on the concrete up in the Brisbane markets, and we would deliver our produce and basically sit it out there until some other truck came and picked it up. We've obviously been on a significant journey of change across all commodities. Specifically for our commodities, obviously, they are highly perishable, they are high risk. We have a lot of challenges on receival into DC. So our receival temperature is between 1 and 4 degrees, and that's without fail. So there's no discrepancy in that. 4.2 is a fail, and our products range from the salads being received under 4 through to our basil, which has to be received between 10 and 14 degrees. So effectively, we're a Nolan's truck within our own business, is trying to mitigate all of those temperature specifications across the range. So that's a significant challenge for the business. I think historically it's taken a lot of knowledge, but my one key takeaway would be within the business is just keeping things really simple and understanding what the direct impacts are to each of those individual lines. So we carry, like rosemary being a woody herb, does not have the same chilling impact as our highly perishable spinach coming out of Victoria that's vat cooled. So we obviously do a lot of in-field temperature control, but we have a lot of additional suppliers coming into the business. So we have to understand also their cool chain operations to ensure that their loads are actually being shipped. We bring out of Tasmania through the summer period, and we have to manage obviously all of that product coming all the way up onto the Gold Coast for us to manage it here. So if the product comes to us and it's not within spec and within temperature, we've got a significant issue pushing right back down to our approved supplier. So it's somewhere that you never ever want to be. One of the big things that we actually do is internally control all of our own transport. So we run all of our own trucks. So we run 3 lots of 14 pallet trucks. Being 14 pallet trucks, they're a lot simpler to chill, a lot faster cooling time. We pre-chill all of our trucks before we load them to make sure that we've got all of that extra heat out of them. One of the biggest lifesavers to our business was returnable crates. that we utilise through our retailer. And what we actually do is pop them in the cool room and we chill them down. So we are actually packing into crates that are already around about 2 degrees. And that takes so much pressure off our whole supply chain. So at the moment, they're sitting out at the facility outside. Most of the time before they come inside, they're stored outside. You can imagine they're accumulating heat between 40, 45 degrees as they're sitting out in the sun. They're also plastic wrapped, so joy for everyone. We take the plastic wrap up, we pop them in a cool room, we leave them there for a few days. We get all of the residual heat out of them. We're whacking our already chilled produce into beautifully chilled crates, takes the heat out of the cool rooms, and we've got the capacity then to keep the chill rate down. Our biggest issue is obviously from field into pack, into store is usually about 24 hours. So we don't have any of those capacities of, watering our produce down once it's packed, or some of those chilling opportunities are missed by our business. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. Quite a complex chain to really be able to make sure that you can maintain that temperature. So yeah, great things that just those little insights of pre-cooling, trucks and certainly the packaging. I never thought about that until you brought that up. So very interesting. I'm going to change tack a little bit. Now, Robert, we heard about your challenges as a transporter and what you've done and your solutions. So I'm going to ask you another question. So, and you did mention it briefly before, but if your business could do anything to improve your cold chain performance as part of an overall chain, what would it be, or what technology might you adopt that would make it better for everybody in the chain and better for your business to build trust with the customers?
Yeah, so once again, thanks for everyone for having me. Really good question. And as everyone might have just realised, we're trying to juggle a phenomenal amount of different products with different temperature ranges. So one of the biggest obstacles that we face in our company is probably not so much a technology as such, because we have the technology to keep the product at the right temperature. We have cold rooms, we have fridge stands, but it's more information uptake or passing that on, making sure that our staff are across the intricacies of what these products need to reach their end destination in a fine condition. But that's not just for our staff as well, that's often the end customer, the receiving customer, knowing how the product, what condition it's been transported in and how they're receiving it, or how directly off the field they're receiving this product. I mean, sometimes this freight may have been cut within 24 hours and they're getting it delivered to their market floor sort of thing. So it's probably not a technology so much as us, although we are trying to do more and more than ever with less drivers on the road. So that means we've moved to larger pieces of equipment. So we're looking at different ways of managing multiple temperature zones in less pieces of equipment, but definitely just staff information uptake and providing the training necessary to not only our growers, but our drivers, our operations team and our end consumers.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And you mentioned before that you now have gone to a barcoding of each of your pallets to basically track them through the whole system. I'm just wondering if maybe on barcodes or QR codes you might be able to create a little bit more information so that people don't have to remember that carrots have to be stored at 2 degree, 1 degree, or something like that. Do you see a future of more of that type of technology taking place?
Yep, and that's definitely something that's getting rolled out with our mobility devices. So all our drivers will have basically a smart device that they can scan a barcode of a pallet with, and that'll give them an acceptable product range. Obviously, as a transport provider, our number one thing is to provide transport. So by no means are we looking to knock back any work, but we need to make not only the growers but our end customers aware of what we deem as acceptable, but what the industry deems as acceptable as well. So, and the first point of call is our drivers getting that product, so they need to be fully aware. And if we can get a prompt on our smart devices to give them that, then by all means that makes it easier for them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks for that. So I'm going to ask the same question to you, Belinda. What is the one thing that you would like to change, or if you had a unlimited bucket of money, what would you like to adopt or build or purchase to improve your supply chains, cool chains?
Well, obviously, with this emerging technologies, it's much easier to get that information. But I know that at some point in time, the retailers were actually exploring the labelling that actually changes colour. So when there's temperature abuse or when it demonstrates the cool chain capacity, so that consumers can actually see on colour how they're supposed to store it. Also when they get home, because I think the call out there is that consumers abuse a lot of our products. When a product is supposed to be used within 24 hours of opening, technically that's what it means. So, you know, when 2 weeks later, when there's a complaint come through that it hasn't surpassed its shelf life, there's a very good reason for that. And we do a lot of product testing to support that as well.
Great. And how about you, Stephen? What would you change or purchase or do differently?
Well, just recently we had Roberto and Lisa out doing some pressure testing on some of our product, and some of it was a pretty interesting find, particularly some of the linered product opposed to the MAP, which actually wasn't quite as good as the linered product. But again, for us, it all comes down to temperature, as Daryl said. And some of those findings that Roberto and Lisa found, we saw some of the pressures that they put the product under. With a world that, particularly in shipping, that's quite fragmented at the moment, i.e. lead times into the Middle East have gone from 24 days to out to 50 days in some instances. So that makes it prohibitive for us to actually export into those markets at the moment. But some of those findings have given us the confidence to go and expand and look at better ways of cooling our product. So we're trying to chill 120,000 kilos of carrots on a daily basis from 24 degrees down to 2 degrees. And to date, we've managed to do that, but quite often, more often than not, it's been a Band-Aid solution just to make it slightly better. But today, we're seriously exploring the what is the next best solution to our cool chain issues, because everything that we do, particularly in the export market, is basically compromised by lack of cool chain.
Yeah. And I'd just like to say that that Stephen did showcase some beautiful carrots and celery at Asia Fruit Logistica. It looked very, very fresh, so it was very, very special looking. So congrats on that. And now over to you, Darren. What do you think Mulgowie might be doing in the future to address any issues that you have in the cool chain? Are you looking at purchasing anything or doing things differently than what you're doing now?
Yeah, so we're similar to Steve. We've got issues with temperature. Getting the field heat out is critical to us. So having the capability of the machinery and the capacities at our pack houses to deal with that is a task we're undertaking at the moment. So more infrastructure going in to deal with that sort of stuff. Just having confidence around our forecasting tool, I suppose, so we can deal with influxes of high levels of product one day and nothing the next day, and having the facilities to deal with it. No real rocket science, but just more capacity.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. Yeah. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left, so I'd actually like to throw it open to the floor. First of all, I'd like to thank Darren, Stephen, Belinda and Robert for sharing what their experiences have been with Cool Chain and how they've changed it. So open to the floor for any questions.
I didn't see any hands up.
We've heard today that temperature is a big driver of quality, and the use of technology to monitor temperature has been a great tool to make some great strides in maintaining that value through to the customers. Are there any technologies that you see on the horizon which will help offer the opportunity to directly measure product quality rather than just temperature as a surrogate for that?
Well, I suppose once we get something that's visual sorting, like for our industry, I would think that optical sorters would provide that functionality in terms of when you're processing a product, obviously how much waste that's associated with it. I mean, obviously at the moment we're relying on humans to conduct that capacity, but one would think there's technology around optical vision of products, even in field through robotics. There's been lots of work being done with like the Ladybird going out and obviously detecting certain weeds and those sorts of things. There's also detection opportunities, and I would think that would be across commodities, not just in the leaf range. Linking that then into existing software would be paramount versus obviously regenerating or coming up with 7 different platforms for sensories on each of the product ranges. So that would be something that we would obviously be looking at putting a cohesive plan around.
My name is Lewis. I'm from Griffith University. One of the questions that I have at the back of my mind in terms of possibilities is predictive technology. For instance, using long-range weather forecasts, etc. You know where I'm going with this. Anyway, are you using or planning to use technology such as this to make better predictions about behaviour in the future?
Well, for the last 18 months, we've been listening to the weather on a daily basis. And I have to say, during the La Nina pattern, the Weather Bureau gets it right 150% of the time. But certainly, we do look at long-range forecasts to make predictions prior to planting and also during harvest. And I'm sure Darren probably does the same thing as well. In field practices now, we're looking at, well, we use water monitoring stations as well to enhance quality post-harvest, but also during growing stages. So there's a range of technology that producers like ourselves have access to. And I guess it's up to us to foster those technologies and further advance them to promote quality to our customer, which is key. It's number one to our business is you as a consumer, you're getting what you're paying for.
Simo, we're experimenting with drone technology to analyse our in-field crops. So analysing your crop growth patterns throughout a block, soil analysis, that sort of stuff as well, just to see what inputs are in there, what inputs we can include to improve that. So a lot of technology is early stages, but yes, we are going down that pathway.
When I was doing my research with the mango industry, trust was one of the main issues, and that's why a lot of businesses didn't want to track the temperature. Are you worried that supermarkets or international buyers may use this data to assign blame instead of just to improve the chain?
I wouldn't think so. If we're doing our job properly, we've got nothing to fear. So we do our job properly, pass on to our approved suppliers, approved customers. It shouldn't be a problem, would be my thoughts.
Yeah, and I guess just reiterating the relationship piece with that as well. So we've all got similar customers up here, including Robert, who deals with our end customer as well. So we choose to deal with those guys because, you know, I guess we can fall under the corporate responsibility that they have to us. They're not all sinister. Some of that trust is misplaced in the central market system, but again, you have the option to choose who you deal with. And Moffat Fresh Produce as a business has done that specifically to avoid any of that mistrust, which is quite prevalent in certain areas of the market, if I can diplomatically say that.
I was answering from transport perspective on that question as well. I think everyone's human. We all make mistakes at times in the sense that things will go wrong. I'd like to think that all of our customers would have that knowledge that I or any one of the business would come forward and put our hands up if we did make a mistake. And I'd also encourage any of our growers to start using any of your data tracking sort of devices, because anything that we can do as an integral part of the supply chain to improve and get a better result for our customer ultimately means a better result for us as a transport company. If we don't have any growth in our customers, and we don't have any growth as a transport company. So anything I think that any part of the chain can do better is encouraged.
Oh, I was just going to add to that, like no one gets out of bed to get it wrong, you know, and when they reject 14 pallets on a truck and you've got to dump it at the food waste station, there's no fun in any of that for anyone within the business, especially the amount of processing time that it took to put into each individual package to go through that process. So, you know, I think it's a demonstration how we get things right rather than focusing on how we get things wrong.
Okay, well, look, I'd just like you all to thank our panellists for having a really great chat. They probably will be around for a little while afterwards for a quick few questions if you don't want to sort of ask right now. Stephen is chafing at the bit to get out, but...
No offence, it's an hour and a half.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, it's a bit of a drive. But yes, look, I wish, could you all put your hands together and thank the...